Thank you, Linda. Usually, when a student gives a talk and there's like one thing that I think, oh, I want to expand on that, but your talk was so rich that I can't pick anything out. However, I will tell you about the first time Stan and I met Linda. It's not about you. And we met before, there's a Kansas City group that's connected with us. And so we met, and at that time, Tom and Linda were living in Kansas City. So Tom said, I'm going to take you out to dinner with my wife before practice. Don't act like you're in a cult. So hopefully we didn't act like we were in a cult. Are there any questions? Microphone.
Thank you. So I've been interested lately in the ecstatic branches of the various religions, and I've heard or read that the whole of Buddhism can be described as an ecstatic religion, and certainly I think by the standards of his day, the Buddha was an esoteric mystic who gives up the heir to the throne and the princehood and all that. So, I wonder, how do you orient Buddhism among the world religions, and how do you orient Zen, among Buddhism, and how do you orient the quantum school of Zen in the wider, I guess, Zen community? I mean, are we just one big ecstatic, happy family?
Do you feel ecstatic right
now? Not right this moment, I guess.
So it doesn't matter how I choose to place, my opinions in that court. Well, at this point, I will push for the fact that in December I will be teaching a class for the online Sangha's 360 Zen class. I will be teaching a class called Zens, which will be comparing the various branches of descended from Chan in ancient China. So if you want to hear my opinion,
We'd have to pay $25 for that.
on a really profound issue there in your use of the word ecstatic, because ecstatic means special. But any good Zen teacher, and there are tons of comments about this, will tell you nothing special. So this is very interesting, and also in Zen, Sun in Korean, Tian in Vietnamese, Chan in Chinese, in these various traditions that come, descended from Huinan, basically, there's a lot of talk about waking up, which is badly translated as enlightenment. The word is actually connected with bodhi, which means wake up. So there's a lot of talk about waking up, and in Japan, especially, they talk about these kensho experiences, these awakening experiences. And the universe collapses to a point, and you are one with all beings, and etc. All this kind of stuff happens, and although I should say not necessarily, but it depends on sort of what you're like, what your awakening experiences are like. Some people have great big things in Technicolor, and some people are just like they pick up their foot and put it down again. But so there's a lot of talk about this kind of thing, this kind of experience, but that's not the point. As Wenda said, the point is these four great vows. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to liberate them all, is another way to translate it. Save, liberate, whatever you want. Really means cross over to the other shore. So, and in the Mahayana, Zen is part of the Mahayana. So there's the Theravada, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana, which is Tibetan, but they like to call themselves Mahayana also to make things more confusing. And they come out of the Mahayana, so, okay. So in the Mahayana, there's this real emphasis on lack of separation. nothing is separate from anything else. There's this profound interpenetration. And there's also this emptiness, which does not mean nothing. It's not nihilistic. It's very fertile emptiness, like space you know, to use one metaphor from science, in quantum physics, space is constantly producing, you know, I don't even know what I want to call them now, like, you know, the quantum things, they pop in and out of existence constantly. So it's this very fertile emptiness, and everything is, you know, interpenetrating within this emptiness. So that's, you know, what you were kind of talking about, right? But it's also really ordinary. That's the thing. You know, we spend our lives so trapped. You know, we're just trained to be trapped in our frontal lobes. From the minute we can talk, the minute we start talking, that becomes our universe. The universe of thinking and the universe of speech, you know? And that becomes our universe. The stories that we tell about ourselves and other people and objects. You know, Stan's mom, Stan, for those who don't know, is my husband. He's on the screen recording this talk, and he's the other Zen master here. And anyway, his mother flew us when she was in the early stages of Alzheimer's, and she would spend the whole day just sitting and looking out the porch window. And we came home, she'd tell us about Mr. and Mrs. Robin and what they did, and what this leaf person did, and she had all these stories. Well, we do that constantly, you know, not nearly in as charming a manner, I should say. So we get trapped in this stuff. And then when there's a slight opening, we go, whoa, look at that, it's so remarkable. You know, I remember when I started sitting, and I'd be sitting on the back porch of Cambridge Zen Center, you know, on a retreat, and I'd look and I would see the trees. You know, I would just see them so clearly, and it was so amazing. And I would just want to run to the Master Son and say, am I enlightened? Am I enlightened? You know, this kind of thing where you know, always enlightened stories. It's always like somebody stubbed their toe, or somebody heard a bell. You know, it's always like some little sensory thing, and then, whoa, everything opens up. But that's always there for us. So, in a very profound sense, it's not special. You just have to look. And the more you practice, and the more you know, the more your center becomes really strong. And I'll talk about body practice in a minute. The more your center becomes strong, and the less you're pushed around by your frontal lobes, the more you can just open. And it's just the most ordinary thing in the world. It's absolutely not special. And it's absolutely amazing. But it's not special. Everyone has it. It's everyone's birthright. And you know, some people have to, for some people it's easier, and for some people it's harder, but that doesn't matter. But there's this wonderful saying, you know, when you have a lacquered pot, and it's really thick, and then it breaks, it makes a big sound. And if it's really thin, it makes a little sound. So if it's really hard for you, you're guaranteed that you'll really notice when you break through. And if it's really easy for you, you might not even notice it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is to open our eyes and wake up. And it's completely ordinary. Just totally ordinary. It's almost the definition of ordinary. It's this other stuff we do, you know, that messes everything else up. That other stuff that we do all the time, that's the thing that gets in the way. It's really interesting, you know? So I wanted to say something about body practice because we're so stuck in our minds, and not just our minds or feelings. So in Chinese, the word is heart mind, because feelings and thoughts are really not that distinct. And so we get so stuck in what, in English we separate out as feelings and thinking. We get so stuck in that. We get so stuck in the stories. We get so stuck in our attitude towards the stories and the way they make us feel. We get so stuck in that, And that's why body practice. This is one of the things that I wanted to comment on when you said how you were thinking, when are we going to get to the sitting? So, and I had the same thought, like, why are we chanting? Why are we doing these things? And bowing was, oh man, I would get so sweated up and tired after bows and everything like that. Now I can't even do them, but that's another story. Okay, so when we do these physical practices, like prostrations and chanting, and especially when we do them together, that makes it harder for this to push us around. And especially prostrations. I know that when my body allows me to do prostrations, I absolutely cannot think about anything during prostrations. And I've been doing them for a long time, and when I'm not injured, they're actually very easy for me. I don't work up a sweat anymore. I could do them on my own during COVID when we weren't doing them together. I was doing them 8 minutes, and I was like, 73, 75 years old or something. I was doing them in 8 minutes, but this physicality of it, and prostrations, I cannot say too many wonderful things about them. As Zen Master pointed out, you're rotating around your center of gravity. And as I like to point out, you end up in the end, imagine on the floor, you end up in the end in a position of total submission. And then you get up again. And so you go into total submission, and then you get up, and total submission, and then you get up. And that is kind of rewiring your body and your mind, because your mind and body are not separate. It's like the prostrations kind of rewire you. You don't have to think about it. In fact, if you think about it, that won't help. You just do it over and over. And then when we're chanting and we're really listening to each other, we're chanting together and we're really listening to each other. And then that brings us out of our personal jail cells. We're really connecting with each other. So when you're chanting, that's also a physical practice. When you're chanting, you're aware of your breathing, even if you're not consciously aware of it. You have to be aware of your breathing. Like you breathe in certain places and you don't breathe in other places. It's not arbitrary. You're following the tune. You're following the rhythm. And so you breathe, everybody tends to breathe in the same places. It's really interesting. And so there's this together action, as Zen Master Sung-san used to talk about. There's together action, and there's this physicality, again, with chanting. And in my home practice, I don't chant, but when I do solo retreats, I do lots of chanting, extra chanting. And when I got old and I couldn't do midnight practice anymore in a solo retreat, I would just walk around and just chant Kwanzaa and Boso over and over, because I wouldn't fall asleep if I did that, whereas if I tried to sit, I'd fall asleep, So the physicality of these things, and a lot of our practices connect with our breath. Like I often recommend, on the out breath you pray 1, next out breath 2, you go to 10, you start again at 1, especially for people who are new. But this is a practice you can do your whole life. And that physicality, that you're paying attention to your breath, but not in an obsessive fashion. It's like your mind and your body are coming together, because your mind is thinking 1 and you're breathing out. And then your mind is thinking 2 and you're breathing out. Or maybe you're breathing out and your mind is thinking 1, right? And you're breathing out and your mind is thinking 2. So they're not separate. And it's very grounding. And our mudra is also very grounding. This mudra like this. People who can't see because I have a screen in front of me. This mudra. And where is this mudra located? This mudra is located 3 fingers below our belly button. So one is doing it, okay? So you see it's like 3 fingers below your belly button. That's your tian tian. That's your energy garden in Chinese, Tanjin in Korean, and for some reason the Japanese call it R. It's a center point. If you do martial arts, it's very important in martial arts, this Tiantian. And so you're focusing your energy there. And then when your energy starts rising up, you have your hands to remind you, no, put it down here. Just let it rest. So your center is becoming strong. And Zen Master Song-san, I didn't bring my Zen stick in here. You know, when you become a teacher, you get a stick, and various kinds of fancy sticks. And he would take his stick and he would poke you in the stomach and he would say, your center must become stronger, stronger, stronger. And he'd actually, he wouldn't hurt you, but he'd actually touch you with this stick, you know. So our center becomes stronger in these practices, you know, our posture and sitting, our prostrations, chanting, our center becomes stronger. And then we're less blown around. We're less blown around by the winds of our thoughts and winds of our feeling. Then we really can help, because you have to be solid. You know, you can't help people if you're not solid. Anyone who has a small child, and you have small children, or they have tantrums, they do this, they do that, you know, right? Malik's kid is 19 months old right now, so he knows very well what I'm talking about. Wait till they become teenagers. But yeah, if you don't have a strong center when your kid falls apart, you know, so the strong center is really, really important. And our practice really helps us find this strong center, which again we already have, but you know, we tend to not pay attention to it. So our practice helps us in so many ways find the strong center. That's what it does. And so it's not about, I forgot another word you use, this ecstatic. Yeah, it's not about ecstasy. What it's about is solidity. It's about being really solid, not stolid, boring, but solid, really solid, and really awake, and with a strong center. So that's the point. And I don't know where that puts us on any kind of, you know, diagram chart of religions of the world, but that's, you know, sort of what the point of it is. So thank you very much for your question. Are there any other questions? Yes, we need the microphone.
Thank you. First of all, I'm gonna ask you about these microphones because I think we need those in New York. Yes. Sorry, I'm speaking into the microphone and assuming that you can hear me, but you're in the room with me. I just wanted to share, you mentioned children, and so I can't resist. I'll share a short story and then I have a question. So Jad, my son, is 19 months old, and the other day he woke up, and usually he wakes up happy, and this time he woke up a little bit later, and one of the first things he did was run from one end of our apartment to the other end, screaming. He was just going ah, and then ah, and there was part of me that, you know, was kind of alarmed, and I think it's very much sort of to your point about the center and our responsibility and how it carries to other people, is that I just waited, and I sort of put myself in the room in a place where I was just accessible whenever he was done. And at some point he just put his hands up. He came to me, put his hands up for me to pick him up, and I just picked him up and I said, "Sweetie, are you hungry?" And he just nodded his head very quietly. And you know, I don't think that that's necessarily extraordinary, but I mean, there's nothing more ordinary than a father asking their son if they're hungry. But I think a few years ago I would have just freaked out and like had no idea, been so caught up in the manifestation of his emotion that I definitely could not have done that. So very grateful for this practice for that. The question is about anger. There's a sense that, I think we spend a lot, or I have a bad habit of getting angry and getting righteously angry. If I'm sort of right in a situation by some standard, whatever it may be, if I'm kind of right, I'm just going to get on that soapbox and yell for, especially with close family, my parents, my wife. She didn't do something right, whatever. There's something in our practice that's sort of, like get in touch 100%. I've heard teachers be like, oh, when you're angry, just 100% angry. And it just, that's bodhisattva anger. And I don't know, I haven't really experienced that way. Usually it goes on and it's loud and it hurts people. And so I'm curious if you have any other approaches to anger.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story. So I met Zen Master Bon Hae in 1976. And I practiced with him on the East Coast in Cambridge and Providence, Rhode Island. And then I moved out here, and he would come out here and lead retreats, which was remarkable that he did that. And he also led retreats in other places, and I would sit with him in Berkeley, and I would sit with him. He was leading a retreat in Colorado, and this was before we had a kid, so I was able to just get in the car and go to Colorado. So Stan and I and another guy who lived here at the time went out to sit this retreat in Colorado. And at that time, and half the people in this room have heard this story 100 times. At that time, Zen Master Bon Hae was telling a story. If you're any kind of teacher, you know that you tend to repeat stories. You find a certain story useful, and you repeat it for months or years, and then it goes away, and you have another set of stories that you tell. So at the time, he had this story, one of his sort of routine stories, that he told about a beautiful woman on the side of the road wearing fancy clothes, and she has a flat tire, and she can't change her flat tire. And I forget what the point of the story was. But I would get so angry hearing the story, because I knew how to change a flat tire. And I changed my own oil, god damn it, And I didn't care if my clothes got grease and so on and so forth. So I thought this was a really horrible, sexist story. And I guess I'd heard that story in several places within the last year of here in Colorado, and I was just fuming. And after he's asking for questions, and I raised my hand and I said, "Why do you tell this horrible sexist story?" And he said something really lame. I don't remember what it was, but it was really lame. It just evaded the issue. And so I sat there. Then he leaves the room, and we go back to sitting. And I'm sitting there just furious. I'm just fuming. And here I am, sitting in a retreat in Colorado, and instead of practicing whatever my practice was, I'm fuming. I'm just sitting there, just thinking, he's so sexist, this is so horrible. I'm just going on and on and on and on and on. And finally, the stick gets hit for walking meditation, and everyone lines up, and they very politely they walk together, with their hands in the right position and everything. I burst out of there. I just burst out of there, and I go find him. He's doing like calligraphy with somebody, and I burst in there. I said, "Why do you tell the story about this woman? It's a sexist, horrible story." He stands up and he points to me and says, "I never made woman." And he never mentioned it again. So anger means we go run, like that, and we get stuck. and we're not helpful. But his anger was bodhisattva anger. It lasted for half a second, or however long it says to say, I never made a woman. You just listen to me, he stood up, he said that, and that was it. That was it. So that's my anger story.
What did he mean by he never made woman? Didn't he describe her as a woman?
I was hanging on to this.
Right.
Okay? He was just saying whatever he said, and maybe it was stupid. It was stupid. It didn't matter. I was the one who was holding it. And I can tell you, as you are learning as the father of a young child, you will experience anger. And, and it is really interesting. I had a friend in graduate school who said once, I never understood anger until my son turned 5 years old. No, I never understood murder until my son turned 5 years old. So those of us in this room, I don't know who in this room are parents, some of them I know. Yeah, you get really angry at your kids because they're like an extension of you. And it's really interesting. And to have that mind where instead of, rubbing it in, you're making it, like when it talked about the chariot, the grooves of the chariot get deeper and deeper and deeper. Instead of doing that, to either use it or throw it away. If you can't use it in the moment, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. And it's really, really hard. Because the other thing about anger, as you pointed out, you started off by talking about when I'm right. Anger is how we know we're good people. Anger always has this kind of self-righteousness about it. Always has this self-righteousness about it. And, that's how we know that we're on the right side. Politicians know this. Politicians, they, stoke anger so that they can get people to vote for them. Anger is very powerful, and it's very dangerous. So yeah. So thank you for your question. It's everybody's question. We all have to deal with this. Anger always comes up. I once saw a Tibetan teacher a very long time ago. I'd been practicing for like maybe about 5 or 6 years. And this guy was giving a talk in Lawrence, actually. I forget where. And somebody asked him, what do you do when you get angry? And he said, oh, I never get angry. And I thought, this is a number one bad teacher. Because if you can't acknowledge what's sometimes called the dark side, if you can't acknowledge your 100% humanity, if you shut things off and say, oh, I don't know what that is. The most celibate monk still has sexual desire. The most calm, meditative Tibetan tulku, Rinpoche, whatever, still has anger. We all have these feelings. We all have feelings of grief and sadness and all these feelings. We all have them. And if we can't face them and say, okay. And if we let them run our lives, and they will run our lives if we pretend they're not there. So some of you know that I'm practicing Jew, and tomorrow night is Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur is very interesting. It's this holiday, if you know the song, Leonard Cohen's song, Who by Fire, List All the Ways You Can Die. That is actually an adaptation part of the Yom Kippur liturgy. So it's this Day of Atonement. And you fast and you don't eat or drink water for 26 hours. Sort of like Ramadan compressed. You just have this really compressed period. And part of the liturgy, and you repeat things over and over. When Stan first came to me in Jewish services, he said, why do they take so long? And it's because you're repeating things over and over. And one of the things you repeat is this confessional. And everyone together says the same list of bad behaviors. Sin isn't quite a word that fits into Judaism, the way it's used in Christianity, but these really, these hindrances, these bad things, these things that cause trouble, and everybody lists the same ones. You know how it's, oh, I didn't do that. Well, I did that one, but I didn't do that one. And everybody together, because you have to face the whole thing. You have to face all of the humanity, including the parts that cause difficulties for others and for yourself. You have to face it all. You can't say, oh, I don't do that. I'm such a good person. You can't do that. So that's really important. So again, thank you for your question. Are there any other questions? Okay.
I was wondering if you might say something about groundlessness. And the reason why I'm asking is it's almost like Wanda was talking about the elderly woman, and she said, I don't even know when I'm going to die. It's like she was trying to hold on to some kind of certainty or some kind of something. And a couple of years ago, I read some Pema Chodron, and she likes to talk a lot about groundlessness. And I didn't like it at all. When I read it. I hated it. I hated the whole concept, but I knew that she was right. It's like, she's totally right, but I don't like it, And the other thing about groundlessness that came up recently is I was listening to some Joseph Goldstein, and he said that emptiness isn't so much about spaciousness as it is about groundlessness. So I was just wondering, and then when I was sitting here thinking about groundlessness, I was thinking, well, Zen is kind of like groundlessness, because it's this whole idea of like, being in the present moment. So like if you're, always trying to ground yourself in something, you're not really in the present moment. So, but I'm curious what you might say about groundlessness.
Yeah, so, emptiness isn't the same as groundlessness. I don't want to go there, because that's just, frontal lobe stuff. So first of all, you have to be grounded. You have to be stable. So we need to be grounded. But what are we grounded in? We're grounded in groundlessness. Okay? So that means complete acceptance that we don't know what's going to happen in the next 30 seconds. Maybe there's a giant meteor with Kansas and Senate written on it, rushing towards us. So nobody knows anything. I was thinking this morning, while I was showering, actually, I was thinking about that city, in Libya, where these people were just swept. What is it, like 10,000 people? Over 11,000 people. Just swept away. Just completely swept away. While they were sleeping. Can you imagine you're sleeping, and then suddenly you're sort of half awake, and you're drowning. And you don't know where this came from. And then you're gone. So that's the human condition. That's all of our condition. So just completely accepting the contingency of this self that we define. But then there's this being grounded, which means not in the sense of believing that you have some kind of permanency and that you can predict your fate, but you're grounded exactly in this instability. It becomes your home. That's when I said your center becoming strong. Then whatever happens, your response is appropriate. I don't know what the appropriate response is to being awakened by a flood that's drowning you. I guess you just drown. I mean, what else can you do? But, so you're grounded in groundlessness. And it's interesting when you said, I didn't like it, but I knew it was correct. Because a lot of times we have this feeling like, people want to know what happens when you die. And everybody wants to feel like, but anytime, if you tell me what happens after people die, I'm going to say, I don't know. It's like we want to have these ideas, we want to comfort ourselves. And we don't. And then that gives rise to even greater discomfort. My mother was terrified of death. She could not stand to hear about death. And she would never allow me to wear black as a kid because it was the color of death. And she didn't even tell me that my grandfather died until after his funeral because she didn't want me to go to his funeral. In Judaism, you're buried like within 24 hours, if it can be arranged. And so she could get away with it. I wasn't going to ask, where's Zeta, because it was just saw him a few days ago, right? But then she had to face her own death. So, trying to push things away and saying, no, 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 that doesn't help, because sooner or later they catch up with you. So yeah, you have to, whether you like it or not, this universe is what it is. And to let go of attachment to whether you like it or not, to let go of trying to push it away, and just say, okay, that's how it is, Well, Tom.
So in the morning bell chant, it advises us or points us in the direction of waking up together, getting enlightenment together. And the temple rules say, is not all of this of great importance? Hurry up, hurry up.
Yeah.
How do we get this world to hurry up, and get enlightenment?
Don't worry about the rest of the world. Okay? You hurry up. Your life is not limited to your life. So yeah, all together in an instant, I believe it says. You wake up all together in an instant. So it takes billions of kalpas. Kalpas like the lifespan of the universe. So it takes billions of kalpas to do that. But hurry up. Okay? And so it's not all of this of great importance. Hurry up, hurry up. Clouds fill up to the heavens. What's the next one?
Rain falls down
No.
from
Anyway, okay. Anything else?